Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoPMM Podcast. My name is Vipul Nanda, and with me I have,
My name is Varun Trivedi.
we are the co founders of GoPMM. And today we're extremely lucky to have with us Nitin Kartik, who is the CEO, best selling author, product marketing leader, who spent more than 13 years doing this across different companies. And we're really lucky to have him with us. Nitin, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here with you, both Varun and Vipul. My name is Nitin Kartik. I'm CEO at Caribou Strategic, and I have been in product marketing for over a decade. I've helped a number of different companies, large and small. And in fact, I've even put a lot of my strategies into my book, Product Marketing Wisdom, which I'm very blessed has become an Amazon bestseller. I've been featured on BBC TV. I've been featured on Times Square billboards. So I'm just very, very grateful, very blessed, very, very fortunate, and really excited to be on the show.
Great to have you, Nitin. And to meet someone who spent so much time in the industry means you've probably seen product marketing change and evolve a lot. And one thing that everyone we've spoken to, whether it's for the podcast or otherwise, everyone has their own product marketing origin story. So, can you walk us through how you found product marketing or product marketing found you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Vipul, because a lot of people in the audience, they may be in product marketing, but perhaps that wasn't their childhood dream, right? Maybe like I remember when I was young, I wanted to be a zoologist. So, what I'm doing right now is a little bit different from that. So you're absolutely right. Not everyone starts off saying that they want to go into product marketing. In my case, I actually started off as an engineer. I did my bachelor's in computer science. And so I'm an engineer, a technologist by background. A lot of people in the audience may be that way too. And what I love about product marketing is you can use your, if you have a technical background, you can use your technical background and you can get to work with so many different teams, right? You work with engineering, you work with product management, you work with finance, you work with legal, you work with the CEO if it's a small company that you're with, and marketing and sales. And so the way that I look at product marketing is it's almost like we are in an aircraft control tower where we see all the planes taking off and landing. And if we do our jobs well, people may not even know that we exist, right? On a good day at the airport, people don't even think about the aircraft control tower. However, if something bad happens, then everyone's looking, hey, what happened with that aircraft control tower? So, in some ways, product marketing, I feel, is a little bit like that, where we work with so many different teams and have our fingers in so many different projects that if we do our jobs well, people shouldn't even know that we exist. But of course, when things don't go well, then we are responsible for fixing things and addressing that. And so, the engineering background that I have, and perhaps many others in the audience, it can go very well because in product marketing, you're troubleshooting, right? Some things perhaps are working well, some things are not working well, right? So your engineering skills are very helpful there. If you have good people skills, where you like working with people, both externally, customers, as well as internally with stakeholders, those will also serve you very well. And guess what? If you don't have good skills in these, product marketing is an excellent area where you can define and develop these skills. And so these are some reasons why I absolutely love, love, love product marketing.
Um, sure, all of us are here because of some level of love for product marketing, but you've created your own career and journey out of it, which is super inspiring. But Nitin, in the process of figuring out what part of product marketing works for you, because I think you very accurately pointed out that it could mean so many different things. Can you kind of give us a sense of if there was ever a defining moment or something that happened in your journey towards being a zoologist that made you a different kind of zookeeper in the product marketing space, dealing with the lions in product or the tigers in engineering or the monkeys in sales? Any resemblance to real life being completely coincidental?
I love that, Vipul. What a great analogy, right? In some ways, I guess I am a zoologist, right? I get to work with so many different living things, some of them very friendly, some of them not so friendly, some of them dangerous. And I love that. Beautiful, beautiful analogy. Yes. And so, in my case, what got me inspired into product marketing is as I was starting off my career in engineering, I realized that I was very good at it, but that wasn't something that was ultimately satisfying to me, right? While I was an engineer, I was working with some of the folks on the business side, folks in marketing, and I remember being very enthralled by what they were doing. I was like, wow, one day I want to do something like that. You know, they were talking to customers, they were doing the market research, they were doing business plans, they were doing strategy. So I felt that that was one of the coolest jobs. And I said, you know what, one day I'm going to be like that, just like those marketing people. And at that time, I didn't understand everything that was involved in doing marketing. I didn't even understand the different kinds of marketing that there were. In fact, at that time, product marketing wasn't even as well defined a field. And so, I took a couple of different roles. My initial role in what we now call product marketing, in those days, I was called technical marketing. So even the names sometimes are a little bit different. So I was responsible, for example, for working with the product management team to make sure all the product requirements and all that were in order. I was responsible for helping develop the product roadmap. So a lot of product management responsibility was there as well. I was working with the engineering team to see how we could enhance the way we talk about the products and the new features that we had. Very technical, right? We had to distill that into non-technical language. I was working with the rest of the marketing team in order to get the marketing collateral, all of that done. So in many ways what we would consider product marketing today, but in those days, my role was defined as technical marketing. So that's kind of how I initially got my teeth cut. Initially, I was in the telecom industry. And so we were doing some software for cell phones and things like that. So that's how I initially got started. And I've been so fortunate that I've been able to develop my skills, not just in telecom. I've also been able to do that in the automotive industry. I've been able to do that in e commerce. I've been able to do that in healthcare. I've been able to do that in public safety. And so many times when we switch industries, we seem to think that the challenges we have are unique to us, right? Oh, this is the only industry where we'll have these challenges. Nobody else had. That's not true. Everybody has the same problems. And so I've had the unique vantage point where I can see the different creatures and animals in different industries, they have the same challenges and struggles, right? So I've been able to also apply a lot of the learnings that I've had from one industry to another. And that's another thing that will benefit product marketers and the audience. If you feel that I have expertise in this industry, perhaps I don't have expertise in that industry. In product marketing, a lot of these skills can be transferred from industry to industry. So that's another great benefit you have if you are in product marketing.
I couldn't agree more. And I think both Varun and I have also had a few, not nowhere close to your breadth of experience, especially now at Caribou Strategic, where you're probably working with multiple founders at any given time. So I'm sure there's a lot of context switching involved. But the industry shifting and the underlying fabric of what product marketing is supposed to do and who they're supposed to work with, it does kind of map onto some almost universal truths. So I couldn't agree with you more that. But then, given the vast breadth of your experience and the kinds of different companies you've worked with, there are some differences as well. Probably not earth shattering, but B2B and B2C is something that we've seen in our own community. There are some fault lines that get created. People are like, oh no, 80% of you are B2B marketers and 20% of us are B2C marketers. And they say we are different and they're more about brand and B2B is more about technology. I just wanted your perspective since you've been on both sides, if you could share that with us.
Absolutely. In fact, there are many different kinds of ways to slice and dice the sectors. So you mentioned B2B, where you're working primarily with businesses, B2C, where you're working in a consumer environment. I've also worked with B2G, which is working with government entities, which adds its own level of complexity. And so there are many ways to look at this. And you're right, there are similarities and differences, right? So from my experience, a couple of things I've found. The similarities are huge. So first of all, we shouldn't think that if someone in the audience only has B2C experience, they cannot be successful in B2B. Or if they have B2B experience, they cannot be successful in B2C, right? Ultimately, it's about connecting product marketing. What is product marketing? Product marketing is about connecting product potential with market opportunity, right? That's the way I tend to define that. And I like that definition because this is a challenge that so many businesses, so many organizations face, right? Whether you're B2B, B2C, B2G, whatever you're doing, you have product potential and you have market opportunity, right? How do you connect the two? That ultimately is product marketing. And so in that sense, the similarities are are of course there are differences, right? It would be very wrong of us to say that B2B and B2C are exactly the same, right? Of course, no, there are differences. So some of the differences, let's talk through some of the differences here. If you're in B2C, the product cycle times and the sales velocity tends to be much, much faster, right? Because you're reaching out to a very wide range of consumers and you may not even have a sales team, right? It may essentially be an e-commerce like a website. I've worked with Amazon, and there, the business that we were in, the audiobook business, the Audible audiobook business, we didn't really have a sales team per se because the majority of the business was essentially people coming to the website, falling in love with audiobooks and doing that. That said, we did have business development and partnerships, right? So some of the things that I had the opportunity to work with is how do we identify the right partners in order to get our products in front of even more consumers? You don't need a sales team to sign the deal with every consumer. That is self-service through the website. But then you do need a kind of a sales style team, call it business development partnerships and so on, to identify other organizations. For example, we were able to do deals with car companies because a lot of audiobook listening happens when you're in the car. Your eyes have to look at the road, your hands are holding the wheel, but then your ears are free. So you can listen to audiobooks, music, all things like that. So there I had to focus on getting the ideal customer profile in terms of who the partner would be. And then we had to find, what were the key selling points and how we message that, how we position, do all that. So a lot of the product marketing skills applied, but in a not towards the consumer, towards partnerships. So if you're in B2C, a lot of your skills will be not only messaging the magic of your product to end consumers, but also perhaps to partners and other organizations that you may want to do business with. So business development, you may be working a lot with, partnerships you may be working a lot with. So that is one angle that may come up in B2C. B2B, the sales team is generally the bread and butter. Now you have the increase in product led growth. So PLG is becoming more of a thing where the sales team, it's not really a sales led motion. It is still a product led motion. Even in B2B, you may have a product that has, let's say, a free trial. And so users, businesses, they sign up for that free trial, they use the product, they fall in love with the product, and then they want more. And then they're successfully upsold into a paying subscription, things like that. So that's one way where B2B can resemble a little bit of B2C. Then you have the traditional B2B, which is sales led motion. And so you have a sales team, and every dollar, every rupee, every currency that you earn, it has to be essentially driven by the sales team. The marketing team would generate your leads and warm up the opportunities, pass it over to the sales team. Sales team has the conversations and ultimately gets the customer to sign. So that is one difference between B2B and B2C. Generally, B2C, it's product led. And if it's an e-commerce, it's essentially on the website. With B2B, you have traditionally a very heavily sales led motion. The sales cycle time can be long. I talked about how I had the opportunity to work with B2G as well, government agencies. So, government agencies anywhere in the world, they tend to be a little more conservative, a little more cautious. So, the sales cycles tend to be even longer there. So, you really need to think long term how you're going to win these customers. With consumers, a lot of the decisions can be very fleeting. So a lot of these emotional appeals that you make, they could resonate with consumers. With businesses and especially government agencies, it's very methodical. The sales process is very, very carefully selected. You may have so many different stakeholders. So you have to really flex your product marketing skills in order to find your personas, right? Each person, the person who's responsible for the buying, the champion, and the actual user. So you need to do a lot more segmenting. So generally, I would say as you get from B2C towards B2B and B2G, the product marketing skills that you need become even more sophisticated, but you can still apply your skills in all of these arenas. And so don't feel anyone in the audience that, oh, I only have B2C, so I cannot be a good product marketer. Absolutely not. You can do product marketing very well, whether you're in B2C, B2B, or B2G.
Yeah, I do think in terms of the actual lived experiences of product marketers, the product life cycle and the customer life cycle, both in terms of the sales as well as the lifetime value, do end up being the largest kind of predictive factor to what the go to market motion would be, what kind of involvement it would have from different teams. Which actually brings me, and you mentioned Amazon as well. I think that's a very interesting example from your life and your work. So, Varun, if you want to take it from here.
That was an excellent analogy about how any budding PMM should approach B2B versus B2C. And now, when you talked about Amazon audiobook, I was reading one of your case study where you mentioned that the kind of excellent work you did for Amazon audiobook, you have boosted 31% retention. And that's quite amazing. So first, what kind of challenges you faced during that and how, as a PMM, you have approached it?
Yeah, this is one of the situations where I think a lot of people in the audience can take a lot of notes. This approach can apply, in this case, it was a B2C example, a case study with Amazon. But if you pay attention, you'll be able to apply these folks in the audience to even B2B environments as well, right? So think of it this way. This is a situation that we had with Amazon, in particular the audiobook division called Audible. We had a very interesting scenario. Initially, on the one hand, we were seeing very strong customer acquisition. In other words, we were getting a lot of people to actually use the product. However, the challenge we had was we were suffering in terms of retention. People were using the product, but they were not retaining in a very healthy way. And of course, for a successful business, whether it's B2B, B2C, any business that you have, you want healthy acquisition and you want healthy retention as well. So that was a bit of a head scratcher that we had. And so I worked with the team and I first asked, okay, what are the characteristics of our ideal customer profile that make them be a successful customer for us? And after doing a lot of research, we identified two key, simple requirements that we had to fulfill, right? One is people had to love audiobooks. Okay. We were an audiobook service, so that kind of makes sense. All right. The second is people had to be willing to pay for audiobooks. Okay. We had a subscription business. So the way that Audible works, the Amazon audiobook service, is you sign up for a free trial and then you convert into a paying customer once you're happy, and then you pay a monthly fee and you get any audiobook of your choice every month, and every new month you get a new audiobook. And once you get the audiobook, it's yours for life as long as you have your membership. And so that's essentially, the way the model works. And then of course, if you want additional audiobooks, you can pay extra and get those. But generally people, one book a month is, pretty good for a lot of people. And so what we found is a lot of people were signing up for these attractive free trial promotions that we had, but then they were not retaining into the paying subscription. And so that told us that we had only one side of the equation balanced, right? We had people who loved the product. They were signing up in droves. The acquisition was great. We didn't have sufficient checks for people who were willing to pay for the product, right? So those were the two criteria. Okay, how do we fix this? So we said, on the one hand, we don't need all these people who love the product if they're not willing to become a successful customer and pay for the product, right? So we changed the offering that we had. In order to satisfy both criteria, we said we will, instead of a free trial, we would go with a deeply discounted trial, right? So instead of paying the full price on day one, you don't get it for free, but you pay a very, very deeply discounted amount, and that goes for X number of months. So we experimented with, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So this way, it was a win-win because the customer was getting a great deal, first and foremost, right? They were getting amazing service at a fraction of the cost. So the customer was getting a great deal. Amazon was also getting a great deal because those people who had no intention of paying, they would self-select out of the program. They would say, oh, I have to pay on day one. Well, maybe this isn't for me. And that's okay, right? The service is intended for paying customers, and the trial is to get people excited and become a paying customer. If someone has no intention of becoming a paying customer, essentially they were abusing the benefit that Amazon was providing. And so this approach, where we switched from a free trial to a deeply discounted trial, it resulted, as we would expect, in a significant increase in the retention, and that was actually over 30% increase in customer retention. It did reduce the acquisition a little bit, but that was essentially the people who had no intention of paying, right? So we were okay saying that maybe this isn't the right service for you. In fact, we were doing them a benefit because many people were not realizing that they were getting into a month-to-month subscription. And then, if they forgot to cancel, they would be a little bit upset. Hey, why am I being charged? Well, sorry, this was a month-to-month subscription that you were signing up for. So by giving them a deeply discounted offer right at the beginning, instead of a free trial, it also reminded people that this is a month-to-month subscription that you're signing up for. And many people were like, actually, no, that was not my intention. Okay. So for all those reasons, it was a great thing for the customer, first and foremost. It improved communication, and it had them self-select out if they had no intention of paying. It was a great thing for the company, for Amazon, because it was able to significantly increase the retention and reduce the cost of servicing the free users, right? Even the free users, when they consume content, there is a cost to the company, and the company was
Obviously.
bearing the cost, right? So now by self-selecting out the non-ideal customers, we were lowering the cost for the company as well. And ultimately, of course, the result, we wanted to increase retention. We were able to increase that over 30%. And that, of course, was the ultimate icing on the cake. So very, very proud of the help that I was able to provide in order to help Amazon achieve that goal.
And I think similar strategy has been adopted by Spotify as well. I'm not sure about US, but in India they also tried with this 1 day pass, 7 day pass. Where they are giving the entire offering. It's not like, okay, this many number of songs you can listen, or podcasts you can listen to every single thing for this amount and for this time period. I think it's a great strategy. You
Yeah,
wanted to add anything? Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
I
Nitin.
just sorry, Nathan, please finish what you were saying.
yeah. I just wanted to piggyback off that point. For companies out there, I would suggest don't look at it as a binary that you have to do free trial or you have to do
Right.
these discounted. There are cases where a free trial still makes sense, right? So what are those situations? A free trial makes a lot of sense if perhaps you're a smaller organization and you want to get your name out there. You want people to learn about you and discover your content, even though maybe only a small minority may end up becoming paying customers. It's kind of like advertising that you're doing, right? You're getting your name out there, you're getting your service out there, you're getting people to experience it. Maybe you'll get some word of mouth. People say, hey, I listened to this amazing song on Spotify. Do you use Spotify? You check this out. Oh, no, I don't use Spotify. Oh, let me check it out, right? So now, even if person A doesn't become a paying customer, person B, who they talk to, might become a paying customer. So there are many cases where a free trial can still make a lot of sense, which is why, of course, a lot of companies still do free trials. But it depends on your unique situation for your organization, right? If your organization is struggling with acquisition, then maybe a free trial can be a great way to at least bring people on board. Then you at least have their contact information. Then you can market to them, right? You can add them to your newsletter. You can send them customer communications, things like that. So there are many benefits, even if they don't become a full paying customer. However, if your organization's challenge is retention, acquisition is great. Now you want to focus on retention. That is where you may want to reconsider that free trial. In fact, there are many organizations who have stopped giving free trials because they have a very strong brand, people know about them, and acquisition is great. Now their focus is we want paying customers, we want revenue, we want retention. So if that is your situation, then this approach may be right for you. It's not a one size fits all. I just wanted to point that out.
Again, I think it's one of those situations where the difference between how a growth marketer and a product marketer would look at it would be somewhat different. And I think that's exactly what you were alluding to when you point out that companies have different problems, but when your responsibility outside of product marketing, it's usually a little more siloed. The expectation for a growth marketer is you bring as many people down to this point in the journey as possible, and someone else will take it from that. But a product marketer has a more overarching kind of perspective, which means, like you said, if the problem is retention, you can move some variable on the acquisition side to fix for it, which might not
That's
be
right.
possible otherwise. And
Exactly.
some friction is good sometimes.
That's right. In fact, you brought up a good point about growth marketing. There are so many different kinds of marketing, right? There's brand marketing, there's growth marketing, retention marketing, membership marketing. There's different kinds of marketing. Product marketing, of course, sits at the middle of all of those. I go into a lot of these in my book, Product Marketing Wisdom. So, folks in the audience, if you haven't had a chance to check this out, do check this out. One of the things we talk about is some of the misconceptions and how product marketing, it stands separate and apart from a lot of these different kinds of marketing, right? So you pointed out, Vipul, growth marketing. If your goal is acquisition, then perhaps these retention strategies are not the right thing for you, right? If your goal is member marketing and subscription marketing and your goal is retention, then these approaches may be better for you. So when you have a chance, folks in the audience, do check out Product Marketing Wisdom. You'll see a nice compare and contrast between product marketing and different other roles within marketing.
Absolutely. And we are going to talk about the book in depth for sure.
Nitin, again, I think we were looking, and you mentioned the B2G part of your journey as well. And we were looking at Carbine, which is part of your experience as well. And that you were responsible there for helping them figure out how to turn customers onto new AI features. And marketing AI features is already a fairly complex, convoluted, and there are lots of people who understandably point out that marketing has not done the job they were supposed to when it comes to marketing AI, because they're falling into the trap of going with jargon and features and not really speaking to customer pain points. So would love to hear from you about your experience with Carbine and how you were able to help them sell new AI features better.
Absolutely. So this is a case of a public safety company. So in different countries, public safety is handled differently. So this anyway was a tech company that I helped in the emergency communications, public safety space. And the organization had a very interesting scenario. On the one hand, AI was helping the company create a lot of amazing new products and new features and new capabilities. So that was a good thing. The challenge was we realized that the uptake from customers of these new AI-enabled features was not where we would like it to be. And so we did a little more digging into that. Why is that, right? And we found some very interesting dynamics. We found that customers, especially in emergency communications, public safety, like we discussed earlier, they tend to be a little more conservative. They're not necessarily the early adopters and the risk takers and the people who want the features right away. So they were actually intimidated by AI because they didn't know if the technology was ready for prime time. After all, in public safety, people's lives could be at stake, right? If the software or the technology doesn't do things right, bad things can happen. And so, understandably, they were a little bit hesitant and they were a little bit skeptical about, is this really going to help in the way that we want it? So on the one hand, we had that dynamic. On the other hand, we had significant growth targets where we had to continue growing our company and the revenue. And so these were a very challenging situation that we had to deal with. So what we did is I worked with the team and we revised a lot of the messaging to not talk about AI for AI's sake, right? Within the organization, all the employees were really excited about, oh, this is now AI and necessarily that's a good thing. So what we said is let's take a step back. Let's think from the customer's perspective, right? If they're intimidated by AI, let's not talk about AI this and AI that. Instead, let's talk about their pain points. Now, in public safety, almost anywhere in the world, one of the big pain points they have is staffing challenges because generally public safety doesn't pay that well. And so you have people who are really heroes, right? These people are handling life and death situations. They're not getting paid what they deserve to be paid. And it's a very stressful job. There's a lot of turnover. People, they leave very quickly because they can take other jobs that are not so stressful and earn more money. Why do they, want to do this and get nightmares and things like that? So we focused on, okay, so staffing challenges are the big pain point that our customers have. So we revised all of our messaging to talk about how the AI technology can help with your staffing challenges. It's not AI for AI's sake. So we talked about how, let's say, when there are emergencies happening and people are calling emergency services, if you have people to handle those calls, of course, it's better to have people handle those calls. What are you going to do when you don't have enough people to handle those calls, right? If all the phone lines are engaged, and are you going to make those people who are calling in an emergency wait? Is that a good option? Then customers would say, actually, no, it's better to have the software do something. So then we said, okay, why not the software intercept the call only when you don't have enough people because you have staffing challenges, you know that. So the software intercepts the call and it tries to identify the best order in which to connect them to the human operators. You have limited operators who are taking the call. And anyway, so that was what the software was doing. So by tying the message to the pain point of staffing challenges, we were able to significantly overcome their objections and their concerns. And as a result, this, as well as a number of other things that we did, were able to help grow the revenue by over double, over 100% growth. And so a couple of points I will say as key takeaways for folks in the audience, right? When you have a situation where your customers are very skeptical of your new technology, your new features, resist the temptation to put them down or say that they don't understand. Because if you're on the inside within the organization, you'll naturally be excited about your new technology. Your customers may not be so excited, right? So think in terms of their pain points. What are their challenges? And the more you talk and tie your messaging to your customers' challenges rather than what new things you have cooking in the kitchen, the more beneficial it will be for you to help your customers adopt your new technology. Also understand that this isn't going to work in all cases, in all times, right? Sometimes it is okay to do the education and help customers understand. For example, when, let's say, ChatGPT and generative AI, when that took off a couple of years ago, there was a lot of education that had to be done, right? People just didn't understand. I just type in natural language and this thing like responds to me. Like, shouldn't I be doing a Google search or something? No, it's totally different. You don't have to search and get 5 different results and think, you just say what you want. And the thing, so yes, there are times when you have to educate your customers and your market about your new product, but that is not often. The majority of the times, your customers already have pain points, and you want to tie your new product into how it solves their pain points. So anyway, that was a big takeaway for me. Hopefully that helps the audience.
I'm sure it does, Nathan. And I think part of what you mentioned, and I think it's so important for us to realize that what is new to us and what is being sold and what people are buying are three different things. And that what people want to buy is something that solves problems for them, and that anything that makes them change from their current course is friction. And I honestly think that one of the reasons why ChatGPT and Gen AI has been more widely accepted than earlier forms of AI is that conversation is still an easier place for human beings to go compared to other ways of interacting with artificial intelligence. Like you pointed out, that even there was friction. I completely agree with you, but it came more naturally for people to chat than for people to program or for people to get recommendations and insights. But the closer you could map it onto human experience, AI just tends to sell better there. So what I guess I'm trying to ask you is that when it comes to adoption, because you brought it up and you've mentioned one really good way to kind of get that over is to communicate benefits. But like you pointed out, one of the initial caveats that you had to make clear is that, well, if you have enough people, it will go to them. But there is genuinely now, especially even with the largest, most prominent businesses that we know have more than enough money to afford it, they are beginning to let go of people. AI is replacing a lot of human work because in our past, we didn't have AI. So human beings were doing a lot of the manual, repetitive work that ideally AI can do better. So, kind of mapping to your example of what happened at Carbine, we have an email automation that goes out whenever anyone fills up our lead gen form. It does not ask any questions. It's a holding email saying, we've heard from you. We'll get back to you when you can. Here is a link for you to complain if nobody's gotten back to you in 24 hours. But that improved things for us as well. So what I guess I'm asking you is that in a universe where this kind of change is happening, a lot of the folks in our community are eager to adopt AI, but that comes out of fear. And so their journey to understanding the value of AI gets stunted because it's coming from a negative place of them saying, I need to learn this tool because otherwise I won't land interviews or I won't get roles. I just wanted to hear from you, from someone who's had so much experience in the business and has seen so much change. What would be a healthy way for product marketers to approach this problem?
It is a big problem, right? And it's a global challenge where the industry tends to be almost going to a race to the bottom in terms of, how many people can be let go. Some companies, the joke is sometimes, one says, hey, I'm doing 1,000 layoffs. Or you're doing 1,000, I'll do 5,000. Or you're doing 5,000, I'll do 10,000. Or you're doing 10,000, I'll do 20,000. Each one is trying to one up the other, it appears. And so I definitely feel for folks in the audience who may have been affected by a reduction in force at your organization. And it's okay to feel negatively and bad about that. It's important to heal from those wounds. What I would say is we should also learn to adopt a glass half full perspective, right? The glass is not always half empty. The glass is also half full. And here are some ways that I would recommend product marketers in the audience, if you or someone you know has been impacted by perhaps AI and technology taking over some of the roles and therefore needing less humans, right? Think of it this way. On the one hand, if you are with an organization, the more you can improve your own productivity by using AI as kind of your co-pilot, right? So in some ways, AI for organizations is a bit of a time machine. What used to take months now takes weeks. What used to take weeks now takes days. What used to take days now takes just a few hours. And so in that sense, it's kind of like a time machine that gets us into the future. We can get things done much quicker, right? So if you're existing within an organization, use AI in order to fast forward a lot of your own deliverables, right? The more you play around with it, you will realize that it's not perfect, nothing is perfect, but it can dramatically speed up your deliverables. If you are no longer with an organization, then in many cases, if you, let's say, are thinking of going fractional, where you're helping other companies on a consulting basis with their product marketing challenges, now AI is your friend, right? You don't have to worry about hiring people and having to think about, benefits and, how much vacation people are going to take and what kind of a lunch break and, office politics. And you don't need to worry so much about these things because now you're on the other side of the table where you can actually pay for AI systems in your startup if you're doing consulting, and you actually benefit from the trend of AI. So if you are, let's say, thinking about forming your own startup and your own consultancy, I think this is a golden age where, in fact, now there are very interesting concepts that just a few years ago would not have even been thought of as a reasonable idea. The idea of a single member unicorn. Think of a company that is $1 billion or more in terms of value, a unicorn, with one member, one human being, right? Because of the availability of AI and technology that you have, you can imagine that. Are we ready for that today? Perhaps not today, but we're getting there, right? You can imagine a day in the near future where one person with a lot of technology can essentially run an entire business. They don't need even one other human being. So if you are thinking about starting your own company, I would say this is a golden age where you can do so much with technology, with AI. So I would say those are some ways you can think of this as the glass half full. In fact, I also have in my book a chapter on AI and technology. So if you are interested in more about this, do check out Product Marketing Wisdom and check out that chapter on AI and technology for more insights on this.
I think that is something really important. I think someone has to say this, that how we should not be very negative about the entire AI motion, but think from the positive angle. And you pointed out very nicely, Nitin. So thank you. Let's
That's
talk about your book. I've actually read the book, and I have to say, what stood out for me was how clearly you defined the blurry lines between different marketing roles, from brand to product marketing to growth marketing, and the way you articulated the relationship between PMMs and the other teams. It felt honest and practical, like it came from someone who has really lived through those dynamics. So I'm curious, what inspired you to write this book, first of all, and how did you have conversation with so many PMMs from so many different countries, and how you eventually made it into this book?
Yeah, it's an amazing experience. This was my first time writing a book. So, a couple of things I'll say about my experience. First of all, why write the book? I do a lot of video show episodes. I do them multiple times a week, and these are primarily in video form. A lot of people have told me how much they appreciate that. But people have also told me that they perhaps weren't always watching all the videos, right? So, for people for whom video was not a great format, they were asking me, is there another way that they can get all this wisdom, right? From all the people that I interview. They don't want to watch it in a video, but like some other way. So then I said, okay, why not I put this wisdom in a book? right? I've been talking to such amazing people. I'm so blessed. So instead of limiting that to video form, why not I also put this in a book form so people can pick up the book and whenever they have time, they can go through that and they can essentially consume all this content without video. So that was the initial genesis of the idea of writing a book version of the interviews that I have done. The format of the book essentially is I start off by talking about product marketing and some of the definitions, some of the misconceptions, like you pointed out, Barun, how product marketing can be confused for different other kinds of marketing. So there's a lot of that. And then the bulk of the book is essentially looking at 2-page essays about each of the amazing people that I've had the opportunity to interview. So almost probably 80% of the book, you'll find a person, a little bit of a bio about them, and then you'll find the rest of the 2 pages is essentially a write-up about the key topic that we discussed. And in order to make this more consumable by the audience, I broke this down into different chapters. So, like I said, there's a chapter on AI and technology, there's a chapter on KPIs, there's a chapter on positioning, messaging. So, the different chapters in the book. Um, so, the way that people tell me they like to consume the book is you don't have to read this cover to cover, right? It's about 300 pages. You can essentially every evening, right? Perhaps if you want before you go to bed, you can randomly flip to any page in the book. You'll find a 2-page essay, right? You can just read those 2 pages and you'll have a little more wisdom in you. Oh, okay, that's a very interesting concept. And then the next night you can read another 2 pages, right? So you can just do 2 pages at a time, very simple. Some people are intimidated. How can I read a 300-page book? Do it 2 pages at a time. And, soon you'll have so much information and knowledge in you. The process of writing a book is also easier than ever. I initially thought it was very complicated, but with technology that you have and services that you have, anyone can do it. So if people are interested, I'd be happy to give you my tips on how to write your own book. Perhaps someone in the audience may have an idea. Maybe they can write their own book.
And the way you mentioned that this is how you should be reading the book, that's exactly how I also read out on making that, after first few initial chapters where you talked about different teams with whom product marketeers usually interact with, worked with. And after that, it was just like, pick any random chapter and go through the kind of thought process that other PMM has. And to be honest, after reading your book, I connected with so many of those PMMs as well. And it was really freshening to see perspective from people from different industry as well as different countries. Because one thing I realized after reading the book is, yes, at core of it, PMM is definitely similar in every single organization in say different models as well. But the kind of cultural differences sometimes you will see, in different countries. Let's say in India, how not how they are picking PMM, but how they are interacting with different teams is really different than some other countries. So that was really freshening for me as well. One more question on the book is, after interacting with so many of these people and writing this entire book, have your view about PMM has changed?
Yeah, to me, it was quite a journey where I found that every conversation I was having with these thought leaders was kind of giving me a mini education, almost like a mini PhD. By the time I did over 100 conversations are documented in the book. So I felt like almost I got a mini PhD in product marketing, but also some of these folks were not in product marketing per se. They were in adjacent fields, different kinds of marketing and so on. And so I would say I had a couple of takeaways that I had from the over 100 conversations that I've had that are documented in the book. One is there are so many challenges that are common to different industries, right? We touched on this earlier, but so many people that I was talking with, we have similar challenges that we're going through. So it helped me feel less isolated and less that, this is a unique problem only I and my company are dealing with. No, there are so many different people who are dealing with very similar challenges. It also gave me ideas on how people in other countries and other industries address those challenges, which I've actually successfully implemented with the companies that I've been helping. So it's kind of a two-way street. Sometimes, I've also had the opportunity to explain certain concepts and certain ideas to my guests, right? When we talk more, they ask me, hey, how did you do that? How did you do this? And one very interesting phenomenon, when you explain something to somebody, it reinforces that even stronger in your mind, right? So even if you're the teacher helping somebody, you reinforce that idea and it registers even more strongly in your own mind. So if you have the opportunity to help other people, give them advice, remember that you will also benefit because that will also register strongly and become a bigger part of you. So those, I would say, are some of the key takeaways that I had from writing this book. And then of course the networking opportunity to have over 100 people. Many of them, they had never been featured in a book before, and they said that that's their dream come true, to have their name immortalized in print in the book. um, they got a copy of the book, they showed that to their friends and family, and it was so heartwarming to see that experience. And
Right.
if I can help give that much happiness to somebody, it makes writing this book worth 100 times over. So I'm just very, very fortunate, very, very blessed.
True. And I think when you mentioned that while interacting with these people, it also teaches you that is something we are also experiencing with GoPMM. In our community, whenever we get time to interact with anyone, it could be around their job search or their resume review or just conversation around PMM. We are actually learning so many new things. So completely, we can resonate with that.
Then just the first part of it is that, well, before we had this conversation with you, I went through some of those. I loved the content. I think it was refreshing. It was clear, and because of your structuring it into these short kind of bite-sized pieces, it made it so much easier to consume and get the insight and that aha moment within that construct much more easily. Part of One of the most interesting things, given your answer about writing the book, is that one of the questions you asked someone was, would you rather write a book or coach or train the next generation of CEOs? And that person opted not for the book. So I find that just intriguing. Is there any particular reason why, and since you do, as you mentioned, this book is a product of your interaction with marketing and business leaders across the North American continent, dealing with different kinds of problems. So from a pure impact perspective, you've probably done more than the book to speak to that person's answer. So if you could just talk to us about the book in terms of what you think it creates other than an alternate mode of consuming that video content, it would be interesting for me to hear like what your thought process was like. Did you feel like you were making a mark? Did legacy or any of that play a role in it at all for you?
Yeah, to me, as I was writing the kind of summaries and the takeaways from each of the 100 plus conversations that are in the book, it reinforced the ideas to me in an even stronger way. And I found different ways of thinking about the same conversation. I said, that's something that when I was having the conversation, it didn't strike me. But now, as I'm writing about the conversation, this is a new angle, a new dimension to that. This also led me to have follow on conversations with the people because of course as I was writing the book, I consulted with them to make sure that they were okay with what I was writing about them, the 100 plus thought leaders that are featured in the book. And so that helped me have secondary conversations with them. And so in terms of the ability to network and collaborate with people, it was just an amazing experience. In fact, in terms of, you talked about a legacy, I think as we grow in our careers, there comes a time when we want to give back to all the people who have helped us. And so I do feel that this is one way, writing this book has been one way where I've been able to, in my own small way, give back to the community that has helped me achieve so much success, where I help the next generation, perhaps people who are earlier in their careers, who are trying to figure out, what about this? What about that? What are some ideas? You also talked about the short form content that I have. So generally, these are 2-minute videos. And the reason why I do that as well is people's attention spans are reducing, right? In this age of data deluge, where we have so much information coming at us, we may not have time for, going through an hour long or 2 hour long episode of something. Whereas 2 minutes I found to be a good amount of time where you can have a good conversation about a particular topic in some detail. And then, of course, it leads you to be hungry for more. And so, one of the other outcomes from my content is a lot of people reach out to my guests. They say, hey, I heard you talk about this. Tell me more about that. And that's another way I give back to the community where this drives more interest, more traffic, more leads to my own guests. And so it's just an amazing win 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 all around. And I've just been humbled and very, very, very blessed by this whole experience.
That's actually my that was going to be my next question, that the 2-minute format is something that most people feel is very future forward and very focused towards a new generation of people who are consuming content very differently than, at least I'm way older than what it's worth. So for me, the idea of a 300-page book is not, something that cringe at, or whatever the term they use these days. So it's interesting to me that you've been able to be that dynamic and adaptable to the circumstance to identify the right way of the putting the right message in the right format. Because those three things, getting them aligned is pretty much a PMM stream. So if you can just, I mean, I now that you're looking back in hindsight, it's a different way of looking at it. But while you were experimenting with it, did you try different formats? Did you do 2.5 minutes, 1.5 minutes, and come to 2 minutes as some sort of Goldilocks zone? Like, how did that happen?
Vipul, good questions about the content and how I triangulated towards that 2 minute format. Initially, some of the interviews that I was doing were a lot longer. They were about 15 minutes. I felt that that was still shorter than the 1 hour format, half an hour format that a lot of other types of content have. And so I started off doing maybe 15 minutes. I found even that is for some people with, let's say, reduced attention spans, or they're so busy that even 15 minutes is a bit of a commitment. I said, how can I reduce that further? So then I made that 10 minutes. And then that was working well. But then I realized that even for some people, 10 minutes can also be a bit of a, I don't know if I have 10 minutes. So then I said, why not I do the 2 minute format? And that has been a golden opportunity where everybody's got 2 minutes, right? You're taking a quick break, you're having a coffee, you can just be watching something. So that's essentially how I came to that 2 minute format. And I also wanted people to be able to go a little bit deeper if they were, let's say, feeling a little awkward about contacting the guest. That's another great thing about the book. They can have like a more detailed write up about each of the conversations, over 100 conversations in the book. So they can go deeper in that. And I think, Varun, you mentioned this. It's also a great opportunity if you want to increase your network, right? You can get a copy of the book and you can reach out to that person saying, hey, I read your interview in Product Marketing Wisdom by Nitin Kartik. I would like to talk to you more about that. And who wouldn't want to talk to you, right? If you read about them in a book where their name has been immortalized in print, that is the ultimate opener. And if you want to set up a meeting with somebody, this can be a great way for you to start off that conversation. Over 100 people, you can essentially read a little bit about them. You can give them a genuine compliment about what you liked about what was written about them in the book. And then I'm sure that over probably 80, 90% of them will be willing to have at least a virtual coffee chat with you. So this can also be a great networking opportunity for those in the audience to reach out to other people that they want to learn and connect with.
I've already done with so many PMMs from India and outside of India as well. After reading the book, every time I look, oh, this thought is really amazing. Let me check with them. Let me connect with them on LinkedIn, and I actually connected with quite a few of them. So that your thought of the end outcome is definitely working out.
Excellent. I'm so happy to hear that, Varun.
And Nitin, just in terms of the fact that you had your own kind of journey and you could lean on your existing and now growing network of other product marketing leaders to have these little nuggets of wisdom. Different product marketers are now flocking to platforms like LinkedIn and sharing. The Indian term for it is gyan. A lot of people would have less kind things to say about it or call it. I just wanted to know, and this is, I think, good advice for all of us, including us who are we are doing a 1 hour format thing. Varun, while we're talking to someone who tells us 2 minutes is ideal, we can take some lessons as well. But Nitin, how should product marketers find a genuine voice amongst all the noise in the data deluge as you speak of?
It is a challenge, right? It's not easy. I think even maybe 5, 10 years ago, the amount of information that was hitting us from all directions, it was a fraction of what it is now. And so it is a challenge, right? How to stand out. And what I would say is there we should look at how much we are blessed with in this age, right? We not only have all this data coming at us, which if we are smart, we can piece that and we can create different kinds of content that we want. We also have the technology that is helping us. Right now, we talked about AI. So here again, AI can be your benefactor, right? This can actually be something that helps you in order to achieve whatever goal you want. So this is why, in fact, one of the reasons why AI is taking off is because you have so much information. How do you make sense out of it? right? So use AI tools. You talked about, let's say, people perhaps have some negative things to say about all this content that is being put out there. And that's okay. In fact, with any social media platform, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms, when you put things out there, you're going to have the people who support you and you're going to have some critics, right? Some of that critique and that criticism is warranted. Some of it is unwarranted, right? Why are you saying things like that? Like that doesn't make any sense. But other things could be like, you know what, that's a good point. If we are really listening, that can be something that we can improve. So thank you. It may not feel good in the moment when we take some negative advice from somebody, but if we are truly interested in growing, that's one excellent way to grow, right? It's free. People are giving us free advice. So my advice to people who, let's say, are worried that if we put content out there, people may say negative things or so, is I would say it's, you talked about the Indian term gyan, right? This is also, I think, in some ways, some of the teachings from Indian scripture, where in the Gita, for example, right, it talks about what is our dharma, right? What is the work that we have to do? That is what we should focus on, right? If we want to help other people by putting out content, that is the work that we have to do, the task at hand. The fruits of that labor that we put in is for someone else to judge, right? That is not for us to judge. So as long as we are conscientious and genuine and doing the work earnestly, that is our responsibility. The fruits of that, whether that thing goes viral and gets a million likes or gets a bunch of negative comments, that is not for us to decide. That is for higher powers to decide. And so I like that approach. When we put out content, focus on your dharma, focus on what the task at hand for you is, what your calling is, and the fruits of that labor is for someone else to decide. So that's what I would recommend people look at it as.
I can sense the absolute calm and the karmic balance in that answer all the way from here.
And I think that was a great way of ending the segment with the quote, Karma ki aja, phal ki chinta mat kar.
There you
So
go.
Nitin, again, thank you so much. Now, before we close it, when we tell our community members that we are going to do podcast with you, they wanted to ask so many questions to you, and we picked out few uh, for you. So let me ask one by one. So first question is around global PMM roles. So what are you seeing in terms of PMM opportunities in the US and other global markets?
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, it is a bit of a challenging time. A lot of companies are downsizing, and so that is just a reality. So we have to just be honest about that upfront. I would say that said, there are areas where in the US and in other countries, companies are still looking to increase headcount and hire, right? So
Right.
if it is related to AI and some of these growing areas, there is still a need for people in order to help. And we've even seen stories of other companies poaching people, company A poaching from company B and paying so much money to these people. So there are areas of growth. So we shouldn't think all of it as doom and gloom. We just need to make sure that we align our skills. And this is a great way to exercise our own skills in product marketing, right? We need to position ourselves. We need to understand the pain points of our stakeholders. In this case, could be the company that is hiring. What is their pain point? How can we position? We are the product, okay? We have to market ourselves. How can we position ourselves to align with their pain point, right? What is the positioning? What is the messaging? So it's a great opportunity to exercise our own skills in product marketing to market ourselves. We are the product. So that's one way I would recommend people look at it. And it is one area where you cannot lose, right? You're going to use your own skills, you're going to develop your own skills. And if you're successful, you're going to ultimately be able to sell yourself to these companies who are looking to hire.
Right. I think you also answered the second question was around for someone in India eyeing a global PMM role, what gaps should they be aware of and work on?
I would say, yes, we touched on that a little bit. A couple of things for people, let's say in India eyeing a global role is you want to try to neutralize, if you're talking about your background, neutralize specific company names which may either knowingly or unknowingly bias the other person negatively towards you, right? If you mention an example of a company that is unique to India, the other person may feel that, oh, we're hiring in the UK or we're hiring in Germany. This person perhaps doesn't understand that. Talk about, hey, this was a tech startup with 200 people, and we were in, doing a social media platform. Okay, you don't have to name names. So the more you anonymize it, and the more you put it in terms of things that the other person may care about, if you know what kind of business that company is in, right? Perhaps they're not a social media platform. Then you don't have to talk about social media. But perhaps they are a SaaS platform, a software as a service, right? If yours was a SaaS platform, talk about SaaS. Okay? Use the language that that company cares about. So I would say tailor your message. If necessary, take out names that are unique to India and so on, so that you seem more global in your perspective, and talk in terms of things that they understand. If they care about SaaS, if they care about AI, if they care about certain things, cross-functional collaboration, if they want someone with, B2C experience, if you have B2C, talk about B2C. So that's how I would say to message it to make you more marketable to a global audience.
With you, Nitin. I've seen sometimes in interview that people start calling name of their managers and the boss, multiple times in the conversation. You suddenly feel like I don't even know that person, so I connect with them. But totally agree. Next question is again around the AI, and we already touched upon it multiple times. But uh, one specific question is, which part of the PMM function will evolve most because of AI?
Yeah, a lot of functions I think are going to evolve. So that is a very interesting question. Which part will evolve most? I would say probably the marketing operations. So with product marketing, you work with a lot of different teams, right? Some of it is, for example, improving your messaging, improving copy, right? So one great skill of any product marketer is copywriting, right? The ability to craft one line messages or even a single paragraph, right? Copywriting is an amazing skill. I think that's going to be hugely disrupted and helped by AI, right? So if you feel that, oh, I don't have very good copywriting skills, this is excellent news for you. Okay, don't worry. AI is coming to your rescue, right? Even if you have average or even below average copywriting skills, by using AI, you can become a copywriting superstar. So I think copywriting is probably one of the areas that may be hugely benefited by AI.
And at last, any specific tool, AI tool that you want to recommend to our audience or you are a fan of that, I use day-to-day basis that we should be also using.
Yeah, I would say let's try to resist the temptation to focus on specific tools. I'll tell you the tools I use, but try not to say, oh, Nathan uses that tool, so I should use that tool, because these things
Right.
change on a daily basis, right? So I use ChatGPT a lot. I'm very happy with it. I have the Plus subscription, and because I've been using it for a while, it is now not so beneficial for me to switch to Claude or some other platform because this thing has all my history, right? I don't have to keep repeating myself. If something I said, 2, 3, 4, 5 months ago, it's going to remember and say, oh yeah, because of that, this. So with AI, remember, it's not necessarily this one has three more features than that, so I will use that. Think about holistically how that AI platform is going to benefit you. So I use ChatGPT Plus. I use AI within various products that are part of my workflow. So one of the products that I use as part of my workflow is Apollo, apollo.io. It's a sales intelligence platform. And they, like many other platforms, they have their own AI. And so one thing that I use, for example, is the AI to craft a personalized outreach to my prospects. And I'm very happy with that. I think underneath that uses Perplexity, and that also uses OpenAI and Anthropic. So it like blends the different models in there. So Apollo with their AI capability is another thing that I use, and others. So even I use HubSpot as part of my workflows, and HubSpot has its own Breeze AI. So I like using that as well. So as I said, these are some of the tools and AI capabilities that I use. Resist the temptation to say Nitin uses that, so I should use that. It may or may not be right for you. And by the time you're watching this, or maybe 3 months, 6 months from now, the world may have changed and there may be new things, right? So focus on the capabilities and your needs and your requirements, and then you will not go wrong, right? Try to resist saying, oh, that particular tool I have to use. So that would be my advice.
Excellent, Nitin. Thank you so much, Nitin, again for answering every single question. Before we close, I just want to ask one last thing. What is the one thing you wish more people understand about product marketing?
Yeah, a lot of things are misunderstood about product marketing. I would say probably the biggest thing is how cross functional and how collaborative product marketing is, right? Many people think that product marketing is the specific job description and it is not this, it is not that. Sometimes, people get defensive. That's not my job. That's not what I was hired to do, right? In this climate that we're in, where companies have a much stronger position than employees, right? If you're an employee, the more collaborative, the more flexible, the more open minded you are, the more beneficial it will be for you. The more close minded, the more inflexible, the more saying, hey, this is not what I was hired to do. I need to only do this, not that is someone else's job. It is going to only hurt you. So I would say the thing that people underestimate or misunderstand about product marketing most is how flexible, open minded, and collaborative we need to be.
Thank you so much, Nitin. Honestly, this conversation, I'm certain will be, I mean, it's not 2 minutes, but I hope that at least in our attempt to get the wisdom from you, we've been able to do something for our audience. Thank you so much for walking us through what is clearly an incredible journey that's only halfway done. Thank you so much
Yes,
for your time,
absolutely.
Nitin. We really appreciate it.
Yes. This has been a great conversation, and you guys are doing an amazing job. So, Vipul and Varun, thank you for the opportunity, and the honor is mine. And I'm looking forward to potentially more conversations like this.
We'll hold you to that, Nitin. We'll be back. Maybe not every 2 minutes, maybe not every day, but we will be. See you soon. Thank you so
Excellent.
much, Nitin.
Thank you.